Hey people of YouTube, today I'm going to be talking about the 12 principles of animation. So Frank Thomas as well as Ollie Johnson came up with these 12 principles, and they're principles that are used by pretty much everyone that does traditional animation. So I'm not going to go into specifics about these principles. There is a really great video. Basically this is kind of like an overview to that video. If you want to see the full kind of picture as well as lots of specifics, you can watch that video, although it is pretty long, at around 26-ish minutes I think. So number one is squash and stretch. So this is a pretty big one when it comes to animation. It's basically something that's used to emphasize speed, momentum, weight, as well as mass. So this is basically the process of stretching or compressing an object or a character or something like that to basically it kind of simulates motion blur a bit, but it kind of emphasizes their movement, and it also shows whether they're heavy or they're light or something like that. So the trick with this is that it's supposed to have the same volume, but it just basically compresses or extends. And as you can probably guess, objects with more mass squash and stretch less, and ones with less mass stretch and squash more. And this is also the reason why you get funny pictures like this from Disney movies when you pause them. Number two is anticipation. So it's used to clearly communicate action. This makes actions more true to life and can also draw eyes to a certain part of the screen. And basically what anticipation is letting the viewer know exactly what's going to happen. So for example, if somebody's going to put their hand in their pockets, they wouldn't just go straight for their pockets, they'd put their hand up so the audience knows to start looking at the hand, and then they put it in the pocket and they take something out. So they wouldn't just put it in, take it out, and the audience would be like, where did that come from, kind of thing. And number three is staging, and this basically means making it obvious as to where the audience should look. Something like having the character look in a specific place will automatically make the audience look at that place where the character's looking at. So when something funny does happen, the audience doesn't miss it or something like that. And this principle also says to make the scene not look too complex. So don't have things flying around all over the place and have like random things popping up all at the same time. Make things happen kind of one at a time, so the audience knows where to look for each thing, and don't just make it overly complex because the audience is going to have no idea where to look. And it also says that when you emphasize stuff, that also helps too. So if there's a certain emotion, emphasize that emotion to make it really obvious as to what the character's feeling or thinking. Number four is straight ahead versus pose to pose. Straight ahead is basically when you draw each frame one at a time. So for example, for straight ahead, you could be showing somebody walking from this point to this point. So if you're doing straight ahead, they would just, you do here, then you do here, then you do here, then you do here, and all of that sort of stuff. Whereas if you're doing pose to pose, you draw them here, and then you draw their end point over here, and you'd maybe draw some in the middle, and you'd kind of just jump in between, and you do in-betweens and things like that. This really helps if you want to keep the proportions the same of the character without any guides or anything like that. And it can also help to just basically know where the end result's going to be. So for example, if the character's jumping over a gap, it means that you'll be able to draw the beginning and the end, and you'd be able to draw the in-betweens with that, because if you just start doing it straight ahead, then you might kind of miss the where he's jumping to. Follow through and overlapping action are two kind of different things, but they are very similar, so I'm just going to talk about them in the same way. But it's basically making objects abide by inertia laws. So as inertia would work in real life, you know, like when you stop really suddenly, you might jolt forward. When you swing your hands, the bottom part might drag a bit behind the top part of your hands and stuff like that. Just basically inertia laws. And again, the amount is going to depend on the mass. So for example, if you're carrying a really heavy weight, your hand isn't going to be dragging that far back. It's going to be just permanently down. Slow in and slow out is basically making the animation start slow and then get faster as it's going along, and then slow down as it gets to the end. Although there are going to be some exceptions. For example, a ball bouncing on the floor isn't going to slow down before it hits the floor and stuff like that. So just basically use your common sense with it. Then there's arcs. So throwing a ball in the air is going to be the best example of this. When you throw a ball in the air, like you're throwing a ball from here, it's not going to go up like that and then down like that and hit the floor. It's going to kind of arc over like that. But it doesn't even just have to apply to a ball flying through the air or anything like that. It applies for many things to do with walking, such as how your arms move and things like that. Your arm, when it's swinging, is going to be swinging like that. It's not going to like go down like that and then up like that or something like that. And then there's secondary action, which is an action that helps emphasize the primary action. So for example, if somebody's happy, they could just be smiling. But if they're also smiling as well as jumping and clapping their hands, those are going to be secondary actions. So it's going to be kind of emphasizing the fact that they're happy, and it's going to make them seem even more happy. And it's going to easily communicate that to the audience too. And the two don't even have to really complement each other or be showing the same kind of emotion. So for example, there could be a person driving, which, I mean, a person's driving, that's the primary action, but it doesn't really show an emotion of anything. The person could be having a cross face and maybe scrunching up his face or something like that while he's driving. So that's going to show that he's angry. The act of him looking angry is going to be the secondary action, whereas driving is going to be his primary action, because that's primarily what he's doing. Timing has to do with the amount of pictures that you have within a certain frame rate to make it either slower or faster. So usually there's one picture for every 2 frames of animation, although this does vary quite a bit, but that is usually what animators go for. They don't use one because it does sometimes look a tiny bit jittery, because it's hard to get the drawing exactly the same to not look jittery. But on the other side of things, it could also look a bit too smooth too, kind of like 30 frames per second versus 60 frames per second when you're just watching a normal video. Although doing it every 1 frame is good for lots of action though, so they use it usually for that. Number 10 is exaggeration. So this is when actions or expressions are exaggerated to basically make more of an impact on the viewer. So it's very, very clear to the viewer exactly what the expression is that they're trying to show. And also faster actions lead to more of an exaggeration. And number 11 is good drawing. So these are basically rules that make the characters or the objects within a scene have better perspective. So it's basically talking about things that will make a character or an object look 3-dimensional, even though it is traditional animation and it is by its nature 2D. So one way, for example, is to use overlap. So this is, for example, like with this part of my jumper, for example, it's overlapping over this part, so it looks more 3-dimensional, even though you're seeing this on a flat surface. There's like ridges that make it look more 3-dimensional, so you'd put lines in certain places and things like that and make objects overlap other objects and have kind of a shadow and stuff so that it looks 3-dimensional. So this kind of outlines some of those things. And also says to avoid symmetry in lots of cases to make an object look more 3-dimensional, as symmetry can often make an object look 2-dimensional. And then there's appeal, which basically means that characters have to look interesting. So this doesn't mean that they have to look all pretty or handsome or they have to look visually appealing as such, but they just have to look interesting. So this basically means that they look unique. There's a variety of shapes that you base the character on, not like the minions, basically. And you also maybe emphasize parts of a character to make them have more of an appeal. So for example, if they're really good at smelling, you might make their nose look really big. If they have really good vision, you may make their eyes really big. If they hear everything around them, you may make their ears big. If they're big-headed, you maybe just make them have a big head, or just stuff like that, really. Or it doesn't even have to be to do with their personality, it's just kind of artistic choices, really. So yeah, that's it for this video. That was just an overview of the 12 principles of animation. As I said, there's a more fuller video that goes really in depth with each of these points that's linked down in the description down below, and will also be at the end of this video. It's by a guy named Alan Becker Tutorials, who I haven't really watched many of his other videos yet, but this video was really, really good. So if you like it and you like the rest of his content, go and subscribe. I haven't worked with him on this or anything. It's just that I just saw his video and it was really good, so I'm recommending it. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you liked it, be sure to give it a like. Be sure to subscribe to see more videos like this, as well as movie reviews. And yeah, I'll see you on the next video. Hope you have a great day. Bye.